Chapter 8. So Michael accepted Jason's invitation for a Friday night and took along an alarm clock. They laughed and ate pizza and went through Jason's junk to pick out some possible stuff for making lava. Sure enough, since they had gotten up so early that morning, they barely stayed awake until midnight. Jason's mother had to yell at them to shut up only twice. Late that night, about plant snack time, Michael's alarm went off, waking only Michael. He was delighted to see that Jason did not even twitch. As soon as Michael got home Saturday, he started making plans for next Friday's sleepover at his house. Mom said, "You can sleep on the floor and let Jason have your bed." "What about Norman?" asked Michael. "What about him? He always goes right to sleep." "I don't want him in there. We can't talk if he's listening." "Then make a deal with him. If he lets Jason have his bed for one night, then next weekend he can have Bob over. You can take turns sleeping on the couch. Bob's mother is always joking about what a sound sleeper he is, so it would be safe for him to stay overnight." Norman hated sleeping on the couch, but all Michael had to do was offer to let him use the gorilla head, and he went for it right away. That night, as they were going to sleep, Norman asked, "You're not going to tell Jason about the plants eating socks, are you?" "Of course not." "But what if he sees them eating?" "He won't. He'll be asleep." "He better be. I don't want anything to happen to Fluffy." "Nothing is going to happen to Fluffy, or my plant either." "Don't you love your plant?" "Sure." "Then why don't you give it a name? You keep calling it your plant. It's your pet, so it should have a name." "That's silly." "But if it doesn't have a name, it must think you don't care about it as much as I care about Fluffy." "It knows I care about it." "How can it know if you don't tell it?" "Norman, go to sleep." "Good night," mumbled Norman. Then Michael heard him whisper, "Good night, Fluffy. Good night, Michael's plant." Michael waited a moment. Then he reached down in the dark and quietly patted a few of his plant's leaves to sort of say good night. Friday afternoon, Mom and Michael changed the sheets on Norman's bed for Jason and put a pillow and blanket on the living room couch. Norman wheeled Fluffy out next to the couch to spend the night with him there. He suggested to Michael, "Maybe we should put yours out here too. Then there won't be any chance Jason will wake up and see the plants eating." "Don't worry, he won't wake up. I already made sure he's a sound sleeper. Besides, he'd wonder why my plant wasn't in my room. He knows that's where I keep it." "Are you going to tell ghost stories?" asked Norman. "Maybe." "Can I listen?" "No." "But if you tell a ghost story, I could listen outside the door and then run in with a gorilla head on. That would really scare Jason. He'd like that." "That wouldn't scare him. It used to be his gorilla head. Remember?" "Oh yeah, I forgot." Norman looked very disappointed. "You can have some of our pizza," said Michael, "if you eat it somewhere else." "Okay," said Norman. But what could he surprise Jason with? He hated to pass up a good chance to scare somebody. Of course. His friend Bob's Frankenstein head. That would really surprise Jason. And Michael, too. He ran all the way over to Bob's to borrow it. He brought the rubber head home, folded it up under his sweater, and hid it under a couch cushion. Jason's mother dropped him off after dinner. "Wow," he said. "Your plants have gotten a lot bigger. I wish I had one of these. When they grow seeds, can I have some?" "I don't think these are going to grow seeds," said Michael. "Norman, do you want to trade for your plant? I've got a lot of good stuff to make a deal with." "No, it's my pet." "A pet plant?" Michael thought Jason would laugh. Instead he said, "That's a good idea." "You really think so?" asked Michael. "Sure. My mom won't let me have a cat or dog. She's allergic to every animal I can think of, except snakes and lizards and tarantulas. And she won't let me have one of those either." He stroked the leaves on Michael's plant. "A monster one like this would be a great pet, like a giant weird creature. You can even talk to it and pretend it talks back. That's right, said Norman. I always... Ow! Michael was standing on his foot. Why don't you get another kind of big plant? Michael suggested to Jason. Nothing will be as good as this kind, he replied. When Mom and Dad went to bed, they tucked Norman in on the couch and turned off the lights and TV. In the quiet, he could hear Michael and Jason talking and laughing far off in the bedroom, but he could not hear what they were saying. How could he know when would be a good time to burst in wearing the Frankenstein head unless he could hear what they were talking about? He took the mask from under the cushion, grabbed his blanket, and crept into the hall. Just a little light shone from the nightlight in the bathroom. Norman sat down outside the bedroom door to hear if they were telling scary stories yet. But they were only talking about their friends. Then they started arguing about which teacher at school was the meanest. That was boring. He pulled the mask over his head to be ready when they changed the subject. It was getting late. Snuggled in his warm blanket, sitting on the soft carpeting and leaning against the wall, he decided to close his eyes just for a minute. He could listen with his eyes closed. Hours later, Norman woke up. He had to go to the bathroom. Everything was quiet. Still mostly asleep, he wondered what he was doing in the hall. He stood up and turned toward the bathroom. Then he froze. From the end of the hall, in the dim light, he saw a Frankenstein monster coming right at him. He screeched, opening the bedroom door, ran in, and slammed it behind him. "Monster! Monster!" he screamed in blood-curdling tones. Out of the dark, Michael's voice said groggily, "What? What?" He turned on the light and saw a short Frankenstein wearing Norman's pajamas. He was so surprised that he fell right out of bed. Jason, awakened by the screams, squinted sleepily at both of them. From the floor, Michael asked, "Norman, are you all right?" "The monster is coming down the hall," yelled Norman. Michael was a little more awake now, and things were starting to make sense to him. "What kind of monster?" "Frankenstein, like the mask I got from Bob to scare you." "Calm down, Norman. You're wearing the mask. I think you saw yourself in the mirror at the end of the hall." Norman stood behind him as he opened the door. Michael peeked out. "No monster," he reported. Norman peeked out. "But I saw it." Michael pulled him out into the hall. "Look at the mirror," he said. Norman saw the monster standing next to Michael. He put his hand on his nose and felt a mask. He saw the monster touching his nose, too. "It's wearing my pajamas," said Norman, "so it must be me." "I have to go to the bathroom," he announced, and left Michael standing in the hall. Michael could hardly believe it. After all that, Norman had just gone off to the bathroom as if nothing had happened. The kid was definitely weird. The other bedroom door opened, and Mom came out. "You woke me up," she complained. "I want you kids to stop all this noise. Not another peep out of you tonight." "It's not my fault," said Michael. They heard the toilet flush. The bathroom door opened, and a little Frankenstein walked out. Mom screeched. "It's only Norman," Michael reassured her. "He wanted to scare us." He certainly succeeded. "Norman, this is not funny." "I had to go to the bathroom," Norman replied, as if that explained everything. Mom said, "Evidently Jason is the only one of you with any common sense. He's still in bed. It must be 2 or 3 in the morning." "Uh-oh," said Michael. He dashed into his room. Jason was wide awake, staring in stunned amazement at Michael's plant as it ate its nightly meal. Michael knew he had to do something fast, so he snapped off the light and announced, "We're all having a nightmare together. In the morning, we'll really laugh about this. Let's all go back to bed now. Jason turned the light back on. Well, wait a minute. This is not a dream. Your plant is really eating a sock. What sock? Asked Norman, trying to be helpful. That sock, said Jason. But there was no sock to be seen. The plant had sucked it all in. See, said Norman, there's no sock there. Quit kidding, said Jason. This is serious. How can you all stand there so calmly while this plant eats a sock? Why aren't you excited about this? You don't even look surprised. Then the truth dawned on him. You knew all about this before. You've been keeping it a secret, right? Michael did not know what to say. Mom sent Norman to wake Dad. You'll have to turn on the light and poke him. He's wearing earplugs so you kids wouldn't wake him up. After Norman left the room, Jason whispered, Why is he wearing a Frankenstein mask in the middle of the night? Michael replied, Norman likes disguises at all hours. Mom called after Norman, Before you wake your father, take off the Frankenstein face. Too late. From the other bedroom came a hair-raising screech.